Hi everyone, my name is Mooney, and I live in Kerala in India. Alleppey. Our town is pretty boring, monotonous. Every day is like yesterday. I know that we have the most unique canals in the world where tourists go on boats, but my parents hadn't taken me there yet. My dad is a very cool programmer. I'll tell you a secret that he sent a few letters to different countries. Perhaps we'll soon get out of this hole and maybe even go to America. This year I'll go into 3rd grade, but I really want to start the school year somewhere in Paris or Chicago. I know a lot about these cities and they seem very cool. To be honest, we are a bit poor. For lunch, we usually just have sweet putas, and for dinner, we eat sadyas. After dinner, Mom wipes the table and the three of us sit down next to Dad's laptop. The laptop is our only valuable possession that my dad bought for insanely big money. Every time we end up watching a movie about some distant city, Dad chose a New York movie today. He told my mom that he received an answer from there and he began negotiations about the salary and housing there. Dad only had one condition: to take his family with him. He wanted us to get out of this impoverished country together and start a new, prosperous life. After supper, as always, I felt sleep and I watched the movie, or rather, fell asleep watching it. I saw New York, huge skyscrapers, noisy streets, some kind of an amazing park and a tall tower. I thought the voice of the commentator. I saw a dream about New York. Turns out, it's hot there, like in India. I saw cows in hats who ride the subway among people, and people themselves live in huge suitcases, and ready-made putas grow right on the palms near the roads. Wow, so is this what they all call heaven? I asked in a dream. My parents laughed, and my dad said that it was all possible. After all, America is a country of absolute possibilities. I did not begin to tell my dream. They would laugh more. But after that conversation, a lot of time passed and my dream to start studying in America did not come true. The city of New York, with its inhabitants living in a suitcase, began to fade from my memory. It was already October and the rainy season was beginning. We have always looked forward to this season after a hot summer. People got wet in the rain and ran home, while the children, on the contrary, enjoyed the warm downpour and ran through the streets. One day, Dad came home excited. He was hired to work in New York, and most importantly, they agreed for him to take his family with him and even agreed to provide an apartment in that office building, almost for nothing. Dad took Mom into his arms and whirled her around the room. Mom smiled with joy and kicked the chest of drawers and broke it. Dad said it was good fortune. I could not resist and told my friends at school about leaving, although my dad strictly forbade it. My classmate Varna even cried with envy. He said that he was supposed to leave for America because he has been worshipping the goddess Lakshmi every week for a whole year. I gave my toys away to friends because I would buy myself new ones. But now in New York, my parents finished collecting all the documents and we hit the road to America. My heart almost jumped out of my chest from the excitement. First, we flew by plane to New Delhi. From there to New York. I will never forget the smell of the plane. It was something fantastic. We were fed on the plane 3 times. They gave us lemonade and mineral water, free of charge. So we flew to heaven. A 14-hour flight got us exhausted. Finally, the plane descended from the clouds and landed. I gazed with impatience at this dreamland. Gray pavement, lots of planes, and a crowd in the cabin. Where there are Indians, there is always a crowd. Then we spent a long time at the airport, which looked like a whole city in itself. Dad was constantly absent asking about something, and then we loaded our things onto a yellow taxi cab and drove off. We were dropped off in front of this huge building. Dad caught his breath and said, "Hello, Empire State Building, our new home and my work." Inside, the building was like a palace of a great Raja. Everything was so beautiful and huge. We got up in different elevators for a while, and finally, some man led us to a blue door, gave us the keys, and left with a smile. Dad opened the door. What was this room? Some disgusting smell hit my nose. The far corner was as dark as a movie theater. Only a small blue light was on at the entrance. Mom looked at Dad and asked, "Is this a joke?" Dad silently dragged his things and began to walk all over the room with a flashlight. I stood grabbing my mother's hand. Some things were scattered all over the floor. When the lights were repaired, we saw our living space. It was so narrow that 2 people could not fit and was as long as a crescent moon. My mother cleaned the room in silence, People's voices, laughter, and exclamations were constantly heard from the side of the huge windows. There was a platform from which tourists looked at the city, and if you closed the windows, the disgusting smell quickly filled the room again. Dad brought us beds because the floor was cement and we couldn't sleep on the ground like in India. So at the entrance was Dad's bed, then mine, and Mom's was at the end. Mom told me that this was also given to us by God as a test, and then everything will work out and we will live in a beautiful and comfortable home. I said that with the help of the goddess Saraswati, we will turn this into a home and love it. My father could not help us. He was already at work. In the evening, Dad saw that the house had become a little cozy and hugged us. We placed Indian souvenirs and deities in the room, lit and licensed stick. Mom made dinner with Indian foods and we ate. Then we went to bed early. Everyone had their own thoughts lying in this new place, comparing our dreams and our new reality. When suddenly there was such a terrible roar and noise as if firing from 100 cannons at once, and I saw a bright light glow lit up in the room. I realized that it was fireworks launched from the observation deck. The fireworks lasted 5 minutes and there was a standing ovation. The next morning, Dad announced that Christmas was coming soon. It was a very beautiful holiday. All America would be celebrating. Mom and I decided to get ready for it. Everything related to this holiday was to be made from scrap materials. Colorful ribbons, balls, deers, different Santas, snowflakes, and spirals. It took us a long time. Doing this, I often sat motionlessly. The window was open and I caught a cold. I didn't go to school because it was difficult to arrange it for me. My mother and I sat all day and remembered our past life in Alleppey. I told her my adventures with friends and she told me how they skipped lectures at university. The groceries that we took with us from India were gradually running out. I told my mother a dream of mine, that we had sailed on a ship to a beautiful island and shouted, "Hooray! This is paradise. We have finally reached paradise." But in fact, it turned out to be our Kerala. I told my mother that if there was a magic wand, I would fly home to Alleppey for a minute. Mom sighed and asked to just try and support our dad. He worked very hard so that we could eat and dress well. Then one day, Dad came home all radiant. The first salary. And the next morning was his proper weekend, and Dad was with us all day. We packed lunch and went for a walk in New York Central Park. It was so clean there, as if from a painting. People sat on grass, ate sandwiches with soda. I compared it to our jungle in Kerala where everything was wild and crazy. Then in the city, we wandered along the busy streets for such a long time that an hour later, we were all in a headache. We went to a cafe to drink tea with desserts. And here, we compared the cuisine of South India and America. Dad also nodded with a smile. "Yes, son. You won't find big sadhya, sweet putas, or Malabar chicken here." Time passed and it was closer to Christmas. There was only 10 days left and my health was getting worse. Mom sounded very alarmed. Dad invited a doctor from his work who was surprised to see what kind of conditions we lived. I read disgust in his face. He quickly examined me and diagnosed me with pneumonia, prescribed a bunch of drugs and ordered me to be taken to the hospital. But my parents did not have any extra money for that. Moreover, usually before Christmas, Dad's work had a chance to make big money, and so he had more work to do. Mom brought me the cheapest coughing syrups. Not telling my dad, my mother decided to sell the crafts that I made for Christmas to tourists on the observation deck. Tourist groups passed by. My mom began to bother them like they did in India, but tourists just laughed at my crafts. Then my mother pulled out Indian souvenirs of deities and jewelry that caused a stir, and they sold in a matter of hours and brought a lot of money. In the evening, when we sat down to dinner, the commandment of the observation deck came and it handed parents a document. Dad read it, clutched his head. Mom was accused of violating the rules there. Something about the license was written there. And at the end, they threatened to deport us from America. And something about a court was also in there. This angered my mom. Dad made excuses that he would walk to a supervisor and the office would protect Mom. Although Dad himself did not really believe what he was saying because his bosses asked to be quieter than water and lay low. We lived in this closet on a kind of illegal grounds and had no right that would protect us. Probably 2 days passed when a man in a uniform came and gave my mother a paper. It was a subpoena. 2 more days later, my mother was given 48 hours to leave America by a court decision. My parents were shocked. They fought for an hour accusing each other of the wrongdoings, but there was only one way out. My mother had to go to India. This idea was heavy for me. It was very incomprehensible feeling. We were in the country we dreamed of, but it turned out that it was no better here either. In the end, they decided to send me along with her as well, and I myself was already eager to go home to Kerala. The money from the sale of the Indian souvenirs was enough for a road back, but what about my dad? How will he live alone in this uncomfortable, noisy city without us? For the first time and last time, my mother and I went to the observation deck of the Empire State Building on the 86th floor, where just below we lived in a storage room, through which a ventilation shaft passed, where they had a switch for the lights. Of course, the view was amazing. All of New York lay in front of us. Mom took some photos and I said goodbye to the city and the tower. We quickly packed up and a taxi took us to the airport. My dad couldn't even see us off as there was an influx of clients at work. He just dropped in to say goodbye, and it seemed to me that he had a tear in his eyes. And I couldn't even cry because of my cough. So the plane took off and this great, praised but indifferent America was left behind. And with every minute a feeling of joy and calm returned to me. We didn't even buy souvenirs since we didn't need anything to remind us of America. The flight to Delhi took 13 hours and then the journey to Alleppey took 4. And we met by my dear tiny Alleppey with shady streets. Mom said to the taxi driver, "Take us straight to Kochi." We have arrived in the most beautiful place on earth. Having left our things in a storage room, my mother and I rode huge boats along the maze of the canals all day. These places are called the Venice of India. That's what I dreamed in my dream, and it was like heaven. We've been home for a week now. Mom is happy and walks around the house and touches its walls, but she also cries a lot. Dad keeps texting us all the time. We were smiling through the tears. Dad wrote, "If there is a paradise in this world, then it is where you are happy. And you are happy where your relatives and loved ones are." If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up and write us in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.